regard?
Possibly. I think that there's a lot of work to be done in the professional associations to support librarians with disabilities, to support healthy work-life boundaries. There are many awards for those rock star librarians, those recognitions for people that want to move the field forward. But there aren't very many awards out there for the people who have more distance from the cause, for lack of a better term. The people who they come in, they do a very good job, and then they go home. And that's the sort of thing that should be recognized. It should be celebrated, and it needs to be supported and encouraged. And that's something that potentially the associations can do. I think there's a lot of work that the associations could do to promote health within the library workplace across roles and positions. But I don't perceive that there's a lot of that work being done right now. I think that a lot of the association work that's being done is very traditional. It looks at the provision of library services and kind of reinforces traditional narratives about librarianship in the interest of proving the value of having librarians and supporting our libraries. But there's work that could be done to help promote healthy work-life balance that associations could lend their support to, give a voice to, and raise awareness of.
You just mentioned health promotion for librarians. As a public health person myself, I think this is something library associations can consult on how to do better with public health people like me. I can already think of a few things to collaborate together, but the thing is both sides have to have an open dialogue and find out through a public health lens where exactly the problem is and how to help library staff not just work better, but also live better, because the job of librarians is not the entirety of their life. That's what I think so far.
There is some literature in the professional literature that's beginning to look at librarians with disabilities. And something that is emergent in that literature is that there are not very many librarians who identify themselves as having a disability. I think the number was 3%. And here in the United States, I believe it's over 25% of people are living with a disability. And that means that we're not doing a very good job of making libraries a welcome workplace for people with disabilities. Their reluctance to identify yourself as having a disability, and there is reports of discomfort, at the very least, and sometimes outright fear for your career and how it will impact your career, to ask for an accommodation. And the expectation culturally is that you are supposed to go above and beyond. Everyone's supposed to go above and beyond. Even if we're giving 100%, it's not enough. When everyone is expected to give more than 100%, then the 110% becomes the new 100%. And people who are doing their best or have limitations in what they can do, even if they're getting the job done, are somehow their job is considered incomplete. This is deeply problematic, and it means that people with disabilities struggle to keep up. And it's an equity issue, and that is a problem for libraries because libraries are dedicated to equity. They're dedicated to democratic principles where the library is for everyone and no one is left behind. But when our workplaces are not equitable, we don't have an equitable library. I think it's very important to understand that the thing that sets the library apart in a real way are the people who are working there, providing access to what's in the building, teaching people on how to use their technology, and connecting the many different portions of our communities together at this cultural hub, which is the library. And when you break down the people who work within the library, you're actually breaking down the fundamental structure of what makes the library valuable. And so really, health of librarians should be approached as a premium issue, a most important issue that needs to be understood and addressed and really cared for as a way of protecting the library as a cultural institution.
Yes, I think libraries, librarians, or the library community itself has to take a good look at themselves to see if they are treating their staff decently, because if the staff are not feeling well, they cannot perform well. If they do, what's the trade-off? I think that's an area the library community should rethink, how to create a better workplace for their staff so that they can work better for their community at large. If we can advocate for that, we are essentially changing the culture around libraries and librarianship. The library staff would then be seen and treated as human beings just like the patrons they serve. I think this sums up our discussion pretty well. John, what's in your stacks?
So I write on my blog on a variety of topics, but the areas of interest for me are disability in librarianship, particularly issues of neurodiversity in librarianship, and how having diversity in the library must be reflected with our neurological diversity and the benefits that brings to librarianship. I'm also very interested in topics of leadership, management, and support for staff.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today, John. I will also put a link to your blog, beyondbookshelves.com, in the page of this episode. The institution of libraries is a very, very good and essential thing to our society. It's so ingrained in our society that sometimes it seems libraries and the people who keep libraries in operation are taken for granted because they are always there and it's just a norm that they are there. I do not even want to imagine what my world or the world at large would be like if libraries never existed. The world is definitely better with libraries. And here's the thing. Libraries and library staff give so much good to their community that they are expected to give even more. Just like John said, libraries and library staff are expected to do more with less resources. This strains the library and its staff. This could burn them out, and that could not be right or fair in any sense. They should not be sacrificed while giving good to the community. What good would it even do if the people who give good to our society could no longer work? We should understand that the library staff are doing their best to help. But there is a limit because they are human beings too. They have to be seen as human beings. Being human means that we all get tired and frustrated at some point. It sounds so redundant or cheesy to even say this in a podcast, but we really have to acknowledge this, especially when we are still in the middle of the pandemic. Library staff are essential workers and they have to be treated as so. Do you remember my call for empathy in episode 2? Empathy should go both ways, yet empathy is a big word whose meaning is kind of hard to grasp. Rather than asking you, my dear audience, to have empathy towards library staff, I ask you to imagine them complexly. Imagine them beyond what you see or hear. Imagine their internal and external struggles. Imagine them in their all complexity, the way you know you are a complex being in your own complexity. The world is weird, beautiful, complicated, and full of surprises and obstacles. And I believe our days would be a little bit better if we imagine people complexly. This is the last regular episode of Series 1. Thank you so much for listening. Between the Stacks is created and hosted by me, Anna Au. Music is composed by Sam Simon. Do you have a library story? What's the challenge at your library? How does your library advocate for their project? Let me know. You can go to www.betweenthestacks.org. Email me to betweenthestacks.thepodcast@gmail.com. Or find me on Twitter at between_stacks. There may be special episodes in the near future until Series 2 airs. Stay tuned and subscribe so you don't miss anything. I will see you at some point. Between the Stacks.